do and put in on their individual blogs. Our MCs today for the show, I am Eric Siebert from vSerialland.com, and joining me is this motley crew here. You guys want to introduce yourselves? Our MCs today for the show, I am Eric Siebert from vSerialland.com.
Who wants to start off? I guess I will. I hear somebody. I hear the voice in the background. Hey, I'm John Troyer, at jtroyer on Twitter, techreckoning.com. Happy to be here.
And I'm Eric Wright, otherwise known as at Disco Posse on Twitter and all other places from Turbonomic. And very happy to be here. Thanks again, Eric, for doing this and letting us be a part.
Yep, Angelo Luciani on Twitter, at Angelo Luciani, very creative, I know. Blog at virtualize.com and do community evangelism for Nutanix. Thanks again, folks, for having me on.
Great, glad to have you guys here. And going to start off kind of with the state of blogging today, and then kind of how it's evolved over the years, and kind of why people are doing it. Is it on the decline and that? So John, you want to start off, maybe kind of give us your perspective on kind of what you're seeing there in the blogging community today?
Oh, sure. We were just talking about this before we hit live. It's really fascinating. This is a very thriving blogging community. Blogging started, around 2000, and in a lot of ways, people, there are a lot of non-niche ways. People are doing other things. There's many platforms now. This is a very healthy community, and it's not just a VMware community. Although a lot of us folks here started with VMware, it is it is one where there's new entrants all the time. There's still people talk to each other. It's a useful community for people who are doing it because it's useful both to them and to other people. They're helping each other. It is not just a VMware community. A lot of people, although we started in the VMware community, a lot of people are cross-trained in cloud and automation and AI and big data. It's remained rooted there, but people, this is really a real selection of cloud experts that we're working with, billions of dollars of technology. Anyway, I can say more, but I'll just start there. It's thank you everybody for who keeps doing it. Eric, thank you for keep this is one particular lens on it. But it's a useful one, and so thanks everybody.
Yeah, and if you look at why people do it now, everybody has their own reasons for doing it, and that I initially started this blogging 12, 13, 14 years ago, simply because I just wanted to kind of put my thoughts and words out there and track things and all that, and kind of have a weblog of kind of stuff that I'm working on and all that. And I enjoy kind of giving back. It kind of evolves where, I enjoy giving back to the community and sharing my knowledge, experiences, opinions with everybody out there and that. And, that's what it's always kind of been about for me. Angelo, what's kind of your perspective on blogging?
Yeah, one of I think the greatest values of it is really giving insight to others into things that you're doing that others may at some point decide to do as well. Whether you're deploying sort of a hybrid environment and just getting started with that and sharing what you're doing there, some of your lessons learned, hits and misses, etc. It's always great to share that, as much as you can, because some of it is private internal stuff. But generically, you can share a lot of information with the broader community, and it just sort of helps. It's a lot of free education, if you will, a lot of free training in blogs, so it kind of elevates the entire group. So that's really where I see a lot of the value and why people really put in a lot of time around blogging. It's really great to hear from a peer at an event or something, saying, hey, I one of your blog posts helped me through an issue we were having, or one of your blog posts helped me think of an issue in a different way, etc. So great to share with others in the broader community.
Yeah, agreed. The reason we do this as creators of content is amazing, just because we get to write it down because you're solving a particular problem you have. If you talk to any startup founder, they have the same story. I had a particular problem that I needed to solve, and I realized in doing so that a lot of other people had the same problem. So blogging becomes a smaller form factor way of that thing, right? Like, I had a bunch of weird problems and I decided to write down how I fixed it. And if it helped more than one person, then I've officially done my job for the day and I feel good. And it's really good. And watching over the course of the years, being able to see people that have thought about blogging and going from that to creating a blog, getting good readership and helping them hone their writing skills, then ultimately it leads to career growth. And, you know, even we talked about at the start of the show, you know, before we actually hit record, about the V of V community. It was virtualization, but most of these bloggers are now writing about development, DevOps, and cloud content, and lots of other things. So it's learning for yourself and sharing with others. I love it.
Yeah, you mentioned career growth, and I think blogging is definitely one of those things that whether you intend to advance your career or not, blogging gets you kind of recognition. It gets you kind of honing your skill sets, a lot of social activities around that, and that I think definitely, yeah, blogging is one of those things that really helps people kind of get their careers going in a different direction and advancing their careers.
And I think, yeah, Eric, I agree with you, Eric. And I think it can also, you know, over time, and we also chatted a little bit about this before we hit go live, but it's almost like you can kind of get a sense of the pulse or a signal on how people are blogging over time, sort of where are people's focus now. And in the early days, it was sort of the on-prem, bare metal, transitioning to that to virtualization. Now you start seeing a lot of people going to cloud, hybrid, et cetera. And it's kind of a signal, you know, do I need to sort of change my focus career-wise, or should I introduce some of these sort of different technologies, or should I start exploring some of that? So it can also be thought of an early signal to others in the for career growth.
Yeah, definitely. vExpert, that was just announced a couple of weeks ago on that new crew for 2019. And John, you helped launch vExpert. Is it 11 years ago, 12 years ago?
Ish, yeah, 2009,
yeah,
I think, was the original year.
Yeah, it's still going strong. And that you know, I think VMware has maintained it very well and kept it going. And there's definitely, it's another good recognition for people out there in the community.
Well, and I think people need to realize what it is and what it isn't, right? I think the biggest trick I ever played was calling it an award, because it is an award, an acknowledgement of what folks have done and the contributions they've made. But it's also a networking program, and it's also kind of a training program. And the fact that it's so big now actually speaks to its health, because you can be just a baby blogger, just beginning to like help with an open source project or help with a blog, or doing a little bit. And you'll be able to get into the program, and immediately you're connected to hundreds and hundreds of people, and you're connected to sources inside VMware and at other companies who want to talk to you. And all of a sudden you just have many more tools at your disposal, including that network, which actually as I talk to people, more and more people say that actually was one of the keys there, is that network. So I think the vExpert program and programs like it are still very valuable. You got to realize they are what they are, and use them. You get back the energy you put into it. So, so congrats to all the new vExperts as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Eric, if I could just drop a little, just to go back to really quickly to the blogging piece. One of the biggest things I hear from folks when just on how to be successful or how to get started. Folks always look at, before even getting started, they say, well, I don't want to start a blog because I can't blog like Disco Posse, or I can't blog like Eric, for instance. But I always encourage folks, I go, don't look at how they're blogging today. Go back to their first post ever and take a look at that and see how they got started. It might have been only 2 paragraphs, right? And it might be a snippet of code or something that they've included in a blog and it helps somebody. And that's where you get started. So that's sort of the biggest hurdle. I just wanted to share that because I hear that a lot from people when they're getting started. I can't blog like this person or that person. But I think that little nugget might help. That's
great, because I know the first time I did a webinar, I was scared senseless in that I just was so nervous and all that stuff. And I got through it. And it's one of those things, like you mentioned, nobody really starts out great. A few people do, but for the most part, nobody does. And it's an evolution that over time you could get better, and better. You may not recognize it day to day, but if you look from, like you said, from the beginning to the end, you definitely can see that. So that's good advice, because it's definitely, nobody really starts out being very good and super honed at it. That it's definitely a learning process.
And watching the numbers is a challenging thing, especially at first. You look and you say like, oh, look at these people. You see they've got huge readership. Well, they all started with one person clicking on the link and Google discovered it. Like it's tough when you look at the metrics of it, and it takes a while to get started. The old famous, oft quoted proverb that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So you start now, and I look back over the top 10 posts in the last year, and there are posts that I wrote in 2012. So in 2012, nobody read them. 2013, people started to read them, and now they read them all the time. So there's definitely a longevity and a patience that you need to have as part of it, which also, goes towards the success. Do it for what the love of the game is, and you'll see the benefits come. Do it for yourself. Do it for the best selfish reasons, and then you'll find that other people kind of enjoy that you're sharing your voice.
Yeah, agreed. So here's how it all started. And that way back in the day, I used to do a lot of lists. And one of the lists that I put together was the top 10 blogs that VMware admins should read. You'll probably recognize a lot of the names on this list here who are still active today. But initially, I just kind of went out and gave my own kind of ranking of what I thought were some of the top blogs. And back then in 2008, that there wasn't really a lot of blogs out there that, I think blogging kind of evolved. And you kind of see that here with these numbers, how it evolved from that time period to today, where we have hundreds of blogs out there for people to read and to vote on. And that early on, there was a very small handful, and that kind of grew out. The first public voting I did was in 2009. And then if you look around the 2011, 2012, that's when it really started to trend upward with a lot more blogs up there. I think people were noticing bloggers and decided to pick it up themselves. And that this is the 10-year anniversary of me actually doing this and that. So we're glad to still be here and glad to still do it. It's a bit of work for me to do this and maintain it and that, but I enjoy, and I know the community enjoys seeing the results and that. So that's why I can keep going on with this. So first, let's hear Turbonomic is our official sponsor this year. Eric, what's new over there at Turbonomic?
Yeah. Well, thank you, obviously to my team for jumping behind this. So we've been longtime supporters. I've been a longtime supporter of you and everything you're doing, Eric, and all the community wrapped around it. People may not realize the level of efforts involved in doing this stuff. Like, Eric does this out of his own love of the game, and he does it with an incredible amount of time put into it. In the time of the last year, if you look why we're a little bit later this year, a lot of life happened, and yet here we are still today, and so huge kudos. You are the one that actually puts this all together. So big thanks to my Turbo team for helping me to back it up. We're looking forward, hopefully, to doing more and more this kind of thing again in the future. And even if you looked at a lot of the bloggers, we used to have a lot of Turbonomic logos. You'll see like that sort of shifted away a little bit in the way that our advertisement program is gone. It's neat. Like the names change, the sponsors change, but it's amazing. More and more new folks come in. So anyways, I'm just glad to be able to be here and be a part of it.
Yeah, we appreciate your support. So some stats from this year, we had a pretty good voter turnout, over 2,000 voters, 400 more than last year. About the same number of blogs as the previous year, almost 300, about 50 plus new blogs. Every year we seem to get probably about that amount of new bloggers that have decided to start blogging. 11 blogs that weren't in the top 50 before joined the top 50. There were 6 new blogs to the top 25, 4 new blogs to the top 10, which is always difficult to crack because the top 10 tends to stay pretty established, and 6 position changes within the top 10. Scoring process, which was the same as last year, is basically people will pick their 12 favorite blogs from that big list of blogs and then rank those. And based on that ranking, if they rank a blog number 1, they'll get 12 points, and it's weighted down. Then number 12 will get 1 point, and that ultimately determines the number of points that a particular blog gets and their ranking within the amongst all the other blogs. Last year we added 2 new point modifiers, and these really made a difference because a lot of the blogs were pretty close together point-wise in that with the voting and that. And These are the two modifiers, which are based on the amount of content that people generate, that how many posts that they can put out. 2 points per post, 400 max. Helps kind of, if somebody's blogging only has 10 posts versus somebody has 50 posts, that will give the person who has 50 posts an edge. And then the Google page speed is one basically on how well a blog performs, and that, it's also important for people reading blogs that they don't want to wait for content to load and be able to slow navigation, things like that. That page speed goes out and actually kind of scores a website based on kind of performance factors and that, which we'll cover in a minute here. And that, so the total point score is the voting points plus the post points plus the page speed points leads to the total point score, which determines the top 2,500 and so on. So what is page speed? If you haven't used it, if you're a blogger or on a website and you haven't used it, I'd highly recommend it, because you just plug in your URL and it'll go out there and externally analyze your site and give you a lot of tips and best practices for optimizing it. Oftentimes, I've seen a couple blogs that scored 0, and that meaning that their performance is very, very kind of slow, and there's a lot of not optimized things going on within the blogs. So if you go to gtmetrics.com, that will put it in there. That will score your site based on why slow and Google page speed, and it'll give you all the recommendations there to be able to fix things like that, whether it's optimizing your images or removing some plugins that might be slow, and that it'll help you identify what's causing your blog to not perform as it should be. In that, images are typically the biggest problem there. And also, one thing I did in particular was implement a caching server like Cloudflare, which is free. You can get a free account there, and it will do all your caching for you. It will do protection, DDoS protection, and things like that. So if you're not using Cloudflare, you might take a look at that as well, because that can also help you optimize and kind of tune your site to be quicker for users. Here's an example of that. This one in particular didn't fare too well. A page speed scored of F, and you can see here it lists the kind of why, or what slowed it down. You can expand those out to see more detail on what those actually mean. There's also a waterfall tab here, which I found very useful in that, because if something's slowing your blog down and you don't know what it is, it's often difficult to pinpoint the cause. So this will go through and actually benchmark from a timing perspective how long every individual object on your page takes to load, and that. And the ones that are the big bars there are the obvious culprits of things you want to look at to be able to optimize and improve your site. So great tool, and that, it's a free tool. Go out there to gtmetrics.com, plug in your site, and you should be able to get a comprehensive examination of your site and see how it's performing in that, because that's important. I think that nobody likes a site that it takes forever to load or is difficult to go through in that. And I think this tool in particular really helps identify the cause and really optimize your sites. So some blogging pet peeves. Angela, I think you kind of started this, and I know for me, when I go through blogs, I have to do things like count posts and look at them first, whatever, and that for putting them on my Launchpad, and that no dates on posts drives me nuts, because I have no idea when they wrote that content, if it's even relevant anymore. The ones people are anonymous to, you go all over the site, you don't know who's writing this, what's their credibility or anything in that. So I kind of put this list together here of things that I always found to be pet peeves. You guys, any comments on any of these? That, I think these are all things that kind of will turn users off. So there's definitely things I think you want, if you're going to blog, you don't want to be doing some of these.
They all make sense to me. I mean, there's a lot of new platforms now that people can look at. There's microblogging platforms, indie blogging, there's static blogs. You don't have to use WordPress. There's, if you're going to run your own site, there's group blogging. There's things like Medium, which I don't necessarily recommend, but there are other platforms like Medium that are coming up, which I don't have at the tip of my tongue, that are interesting. People are blogging on LinkedIn that takes care of all this. It doesn't really matter. Like, I know we're all tinkerers, so we like to run our own hot rod, right, and tweak our own dials. So if you're not using somebody else's platform, some things like this are super important. The trend is towards simplification. More and more of your content is going to be read on mobile. So a lot of these things actually make sense on mobile. If somebody comes on their device and your blog is hard to read, they'll just bounce. So a lot of this is thinking about the reader who may not be on a big desktop with a big screen these days.
You know, a lot of people use WordPress, and with WordPress, it's all about, there's so many themes you can choose. You know, some themes are pretty straightforward. Some are very dark, difficult to read and stuff like that. So I think if you're using WordPress, really choose a good theme, and that's really easy for people to consume. Not any of those kind of cutesy type of things that kind of look a certain way and that, but are difficult for people to actually use. And plugins can make the difference with WordPress and that. Don't, you know, you can go overboard on plugins, but you know, plugins can really help you tweak and tune your blog to be able to you know, have it look and feel just exactly you want.
And just to touch on earlier something that you said here, Eric. I also consider having an about page on your blog. You can go into a little more detail about yourself and maybe put some additional promo material on there, where people can find some of your other material, link out to other places. But yeah, have that about page. And also one other thing is, a lot of folks put ads on their blogs because they're sponsored, etc. Just be mindful of how some of those ads are showing up. It can sometimes clutter the view of the content to some degree. Sometimes some items get pushed down, get pushed up, etc. So just be mindful of things like that if you do decide to carry ads, etc.
Yeah, agreed, definitely.
Yeah, don't make your tech blog look like a food blog with 200 pictures of the food and a bunch of advertisements for rolling pins before the 17-sentence blog at the very bottom. It's get to the content early. People will see the ads. They will click on them. It's the one legitimate spot where I see stuff and I'm like, ooh, you know, tell me about this thing. And I actually will click out.
Yep, agreed. Okay, well, countdown begin. Going from 25 down to 1. At 25, new to the top 25, was at 27 before, and a guy I know personally, Paul Burren, he's with VMware now, works with VMware, and probably the world's biggest geek that I know in that. You know, and you know, I see him at VMworld and that. He's got his whole lab set up there and all this equipment. And if you read a lot of his blog, he's got a lot of cool geek type articles on that, on technology and stuff like that, and gadgets and all that. So he's a geek just like me. I love all that stuff and that. So great guy and that I see him at VMworld and talk to him and that, and glad to see he made it into the top 25.
I'm not going to comment on everybody, but you know, I agree. Paul is like the prototypical blogger. He's now at VMware, and also you'll notice two things. One, prototypical blogger, deep into his topic, writes for himself as much as everybody else, but really enjoys explaining things. But B, nice is one of the nicer guys in the world, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And a lot of this is about giving back to people, and he will help you. He will answer your questions. He will go deep. So can't have, you know, one of a kind of an archetype of helpful technical bloggers.
Okay, 24. Moving down from 14, Magnus Anderson, and that I don't know Magnus personally. I may have met him once at one of the events and that. You guys, anybody know Magnus?
Yeah, sorry. Magnus, definitely one of those fellows who you just know that when you meet him in person, he is everything that you imagined he would be. Just a very good at sharing, great content creator, deeply technical, but knows how to tell the story, and in multiple languages, you know, and he's been with Nutanix, which you almost don't even know sometimes. So he's very good as well about like writing about tons of different content, you know, like any of the bloggers as well. If I could say, even though I work for a company, you don't want it to necessarily all be about your company. One of the greatest things is that you will work for probably more than one joint in the course of your career. Magnus is a great example of that he's doing great things where he's at. And I'd be proud to call him a teammate one day at some other place.
Yeah. I was going to say, a colleague of mine, very consistent in his blogging, and super nice guy to meet in person. If you ever have a chance at a conference or anything, sit down with the guy and just chat tech. Great resource.
Amen.
23, new to the top 25, and that is Tayfun Digger, and he's done a lot of content, I know, and I think he blogs in is it Spanish, I think, I believe, that he blogs in and that, but generates a lot of content in that. So good to see that he finally gets cracks the top 25 here.
Sorry, go, John. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Tayfun is here with us on the live chat. So go ahead.
Oh, great. Well, congrats.
Another person who's very consistent. I think what we'll start seeing through this list is consistency is one of the keys to blogging. Just so you get your momentum, you get your flow, and build a body of work over time. So great stuff.
Tayfun, definitely a sleeper hit of 2018. You know, some of those fellows, if you don't already know him, you should get to know him. Great content creator.
Yep, definitely. Congrats, Tayfun. At 22, down from 17th spot, Christian Mon, and we've known Christian. He's been a regular in the top 25 for quite a while now at vNinja, and that does a lot of good content and great overall community guy.
Yeah, definitely. Christian's one of the OG, you know, amongst many of the early bloggers and folks that I discovered as a reader. And yeah, he's done a lot of different things in his career, and his blog is reflected. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, very super solid, super kind, productive, has worked helping customers, for years. That's reflected in some of his media and his his publication output. And I'm going to say Norwegian, and if he's not Norwegian, he'll be mad at me. It might be. I don't think he's Swedish, so I don't.
Great thing about Christian, he'll let you know. Does not hold back. He's great in that way. Also a great photographer. So check out his 500.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've seen a lot of his photo stuff he does. At 21, making a big jump up from 84, previously 63 spots, Mohammed Rafik in that. And I know he's put out a ton of content in that I know both, not just this year, but last year, he's had a lot of posts in that. So obviously spends a lot of time and effort to get this content up there and that. And good to see he finally gets some recognition in the top 25.
Yeah, I appreciate the deep dives in his content. So really good material.
And I want to point out, we're going to have a couple new people in the top 25. There's a lot of OGs been doing it for 10 years or more, right? But there's times in your life when you have the energy to do this, and there's times in your life when other parts of your life, take over with have more priority, like job, life, kids, etc. But there's space for this, right? And there's space for new people, especially if there's something that you're passionate about. I mean, you've got to be passionate about this to do this nights and weekends, and as part of your gig, hopefully, but as part of your interest. So I don't know. I just want to say that it points out that there's lots of room if you put the energy into it, whether it's about tech or anything, right? There's reward in this.
Yeah.
So
definitely. Yep. Totally agree.
And also, this is a global community. This is a friggin' global community. You will see.
Yeah, and that's what we have a non-English category for the voting and that to help, because there's a lot of blogs out there that actually blog in other languages and that. So definitely
great.
A lot of people's idea of global community means Eastern time and Pacific time, way bigger.
At 20, a good friend of mine, Mr. David Marshall from vBlog, and I've known David all the way back to the early years was when he was with Hyper9 and that, before they got acquired by SolarWinds and that. Great guy and that, and he's always kind of hung out there at the fringe of the top 25 and made it out there this year. He puts out a ton of content and that, both some of the new stuff he does and the blogging stuff and that, and good to see him get in there finally.
I'll make a point about David in that, one, super nice guy, super helpful, OG. But your blogs can take many forms. It doesn't have to be a person, at the kitchen table writing about kind of anonymously about the day's journey. It can be, with the serial number filed off, so you don't incriminate anybody. But David's blog, and some of the people here actually do this for a living. David's one of them now. Yep. David has a different conception of a blog. He does write and does blog. He produces multimedia. He produces videos. He does interviews with vendors. He helps, and he does some paid content as well for the vendors. And so, the blog is a publishing platform. You can do anything with it, right? You can do sitcoms, you can do interviews, you can do documentaries, you can have anthology shows, you can have interviews, you can do video things like this, right? Anyway, I just want to point out here that there are many, like a blog is a vessel that you can pour any liquid into. And David is one example of he's got scripts, he's got press releases going, he's got all sorts of interesting things that are useful to people. Not all of which he types, some of which anyway, but it's another way of blogging, right? It's another aspect of
stuff.
Stuff.
Full-time job out of it. So yeah, he's definitely embraced it. At 19, vExpert blog, Andrew Morrow, and that he's moved up 4 spots from the 23 spot, and that. And he's another guy who's been blogging for a long time. He's been in the top 25 for a long time, and that. I don't think I know him personally in that. He does a lot of posts. He had almost 200 posts last year in that, and it's good to see him continue to climbing up there.
Yeah, Andrea is one of those fellows who is same thing. He's prolific, can go deep technical, also hits on the hot button items that are happening in the day. So you're going to get a mix and match of content that's anywhere from 300 to 1,200 lines, in his post, which is neat. I like the variation, and just also a very interesting fellow. The fact that he writes in his non-native language primarily is pretty awesome. Somebody in the chat had said that, I think it was Vlad, and he says my first posts were half in English. Vlad and my posts are still in half English. I don't even know that I know how to write correctly. But so big kudos to Andrea, to Vladen, and folks like that who are, and Val Desir, Val Carvalho. They are writing in non-native languages with quality. Oh, captain, my captain to those kids.
Yeah, no shortage, very quickly, no shortage of content topics here. And I encourage folks, if people are struggling or kind of in a stalled state with their blog, and, how do I come up with topics? Where do I look for topics? Reach out to some of these bloggers in the top 25. Andrea, who's like super consistent in posting, pick his brain, figure out how does he what's his method, what's his tactic on being able to produce content every day. I'm not saying that you need to produce it every day, but just sort of what are some of the things that he's doing to find content and deliver it on a consistent basis.
At 18, moving up 4 spots for Verten.net, Florian Grell. And I don't know Florian myself. Anybody else know Florian? No, he does a lot of good content in that. I see his blog get linked to a lot.
No, he's a solid producer. I've spoken with them. I think we've met, in Germany, I believe, again. Again, super active, consistent for years. Maybe not one of the OGs, but has been blogging for years and years. And maybe he was, and I just didn't know it, right?
Another reminder of folks, for Florian and many others, I appreciate that he was on The Simpsons. Put your photos up on your about.
I did try to find, I think, an actual photo for those and that. So yeah, that was one then. But
yeah, Florian's one of those guys. You've met him and you don't even realize it, and you've read him and you probably also don't realize it. So great content creators and a good fellow as well.
Good job, Florian. At 17, breaking the top 25, previously at 31, Michael White, and that he's been blogging for a long time as well, and that does a lot of great content, a lot of posts last year, and that a lot of I've seen some of his articles, and that really good detailed articles. So congrats, Michael.
And he does these great newsletter roundups, if you will. I hope I'm doing that justice, but sort of a roundup of content. So that's really super useful.
Yeah, because a lot of times you don't notice content, and somebody helps summarize and kind of put it all together for you. That's definitely very useful.
Yeah.
The Michael, like many of the folks that we talk about here in person, super kind, super giving. Will stop and talk with you for as long as you need to talk. Will help you with whatever you need to do. gracious, Andrea. I mean, just so many of the folks that there's a personality type here that is that I'm realizing is, anyway, just really delightful people to interact with. And Michael is another one, and also super thoughtful and deep. I recommend this newsletter to everybody.
Great. At 16, and also breaking the top 25 for the first time, George De La Cruz, and I think he's fairly new. He's been on the list for, I think, a few years now, and that puts out a whole bunch of content, and that publishes in Spanish, and almost 200 posts last year in that. So it looks like he puts a lot of effort into his blog, and he's definitely worthy of moving up there, and that I think people recognize the effort that people put in and reward them by giving them the votes.
Best thing to see is new folks that are making these leaps and getting because if you think about this as a peer measurement, but then there's a secondary measurement of their own blog, like Google level popularity and readership. So, we always talk about this. They're the bloggers. These are folks that we respect as what they do for our peer group. And yeah, another great example of somebody who, if you don't realize it, you've probably read his content or you bumped into it. If you don't necessarily speak the language, it's just fire up Google Translate and you'll see the quality that's produced.
I use Jorge as a model when I'm talking to other bloggers that want to sort of get more refined in their blogs. Jorge is a blogging machine. Also, I believe has Spanish and English site as well. But just incredible, deep content, very useful, lots of screenshots, a lot of great material here. So super happy that he's on the list.
Hey, at 15, moving up 4 spots from 19, Anthony Spiteri, Virtualization is Life. He's been a longtime blogger and climbing up here in that. Almost 100 posts last year in that. I'm not sure if I've ever met Anthony in person at any events. You guys know Anthony at all?
Been lucky enough to meet him, a good fellow, and super exciting person to talk to. He digs technology, and you're going to see, especially if you're a Veeam fan, you're going to see a lot of Veeam content on there. But Anthony also does a great job of mixing it up, not just being Veeam specific, but obviously he's got such a great voice and audience. You're going to see a lot of that product content show up there. Does a lot of neat stuff with Power CLI, and in fact, at the hackathon at VMworld in 2018. He and his team built an integration for Power CLI, which I think ultimately sort of spawned the idea of what we now have as becoming a VMware Fling. So it's neat to see that he's really, if you love digging into tech and CLI stuff, Anthony's a good chap to follow.
Mm-hmm. And from Australia, right? Again, a global community, thoughtful dude. Again, the people that have been around for a while, we've seen you can be technical and senior, and you can start to be, you could start to have an impact in your organization and in the world. And you might have started as, just somebody handling the backup tapes 15 years ago. It comes, stick at it.
Yep, definitely.
I don't know that Anthony was handling backup tapes 15 years ago. I think this is him as somebody kind of senior at this point.
Really approachable person as well at events and things like that. Great to tap on the shoulder and just chat with very, quickly, and good guy.
At number 14, he's dropping a little bit here. To number 6, I think we all know one of the OG bloggers, Eric Sloof, all around great guy. He does the VMware TV stuff at a lot of events and that. I've met him a lot of time at events, and puts a lot of effort into his blog, a lot of posts last year and that. The top 10 was getting a bit tight and crowded, so I think he slipped a little bit out of there and that, but still produces great content. And I think his blog, has been around for over a decade and that, and he's still going strong.
He was the originator of like VMware TV, right? Like he was the fellow who you saw. He was like, "Hey guys, I'm at VMware." He was literally nose into a camera before it was even thought of that it's a good idea to do that. And his content again reflects what he was doing as a gig. Eric. I'm not sure if he actually works for VMware Education or works for an educator that does a lot of VMware content. But yeah, he's actually educating the community one classroom at a time every day and doing a great job. So
yeah, great educator, gets awards all the time, really good trainer, and brings a lot of that to the blog. In essence, that's what all of us as technologists are learning to do is communicate and try to communicate clearly to others and teach them, and that's the best way to learn yourself.
Great. Congrats, Eric.
Also cool that his name is Eric.
Yep. Another Eric. Another guy who has been blogging for a while, and Derek is one of those that he's put together a lot of. He moved down one spot this year, but I remember back years ago where he would put together these multi-part series, 10, 15, 20-part series on certain topics, deep dives on certain topics and that. So a lot of good content that he was doing up there, and being able to help educate people on that and kind of deep diving on certain topics.
Another colleague of mine, pretty excited to see him on. Yeah, a lot of great content, deep content. And I don't equate lengthy content with deep content. So I want to make that distinction. When I'm talking deep, it really helps you get in sort of into the weeds on turning this knob or flipping that switch. So really, really good material.
Yeah, if you've studied for a VCDX, you found Derek's blog. If you've tried to figure out VMware certificates, you very definitely have discovered Derek's blog. Derek's blog.
Yeah, and also great photographer as well.
Yep.
And traveler.
Yep. Yeah, great guy, and I've met him in person a few times at VMware. At number 12, falling down a little bit. Previously, he kind of dominated in the top 10, down 8 spots. And that Mr. Chris Wall with the Wall Network, and now with Rubrik. And, Chris is, if you read a lot of his content that he does in that, a lot of great content that he generates in that, a lot of deep dive technical content. I think Chris is one of those guys that really, he came on strong when he started out. He had the ambition and will to make himself successful and put a lot into it in that, and got to the top through hard work and that. And, I think that really paid off for him in that. But dropped a little bit this year in that, but, he's still one of those bloggers that, he's one of those guys recognized as one of those, key guys in the community, really knows their stuff, and definitely an expert.
Chris always approached his blog in a very business-like fashion. He knew what he wanted to do, and kind of when he first started. Now the man is actually pretty busy, and so again, I'll point out that at different times in your life, you create more, you create less. He can still continue to produce as an independent, as well as he writes a whole lot of stuff for his day job and creates content for his day job. But again, I think maybe an example of starting with the end in mind. I think Chris is a great example of, I want to do this and I want to hit it. It's my perception anyway.
Yeah, undoubtedly the effect of the quality of his work and sharing it with the world proved itself out when he was discovered by Rubrik and brought on board. And so it's for folks that are keen on, what is this going to do for me? Just like when you sell a product, what does it do for you? It gives you a second to say, I'm going to build something that may be the next generation of my career. And Chris is a great example. He earned his spot. 100%. Such a great person. I'm lucky to know him as a friend and as a colleague. Very cool.
Yeah, and he blogs on a variety of topics, which really adds to the blog as well. So good stuff, Chris.
Yep. At 11, another longtime OG blogger, and that Mr. Chad Sakic, and he's with Pivotal now, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah, he's all-around great guy. I've run into Chad many times at events and that, and talked to him, both socially and at events. And, he's the kind of guy that he'll take the shirt off his back and help somebody in that. He's very approachable, very knowledgeable, writes some pretty in-depth, really long pieces on his blog. And I think people have asked before, are you actually writing the content or somebody else? But it's, it's always him doing that content, and does a lot of great content on his site.
as a fellow Canadian, I got to give him +1 points. Is there a Canadian special point system that we have there? Or is it
maybe next year?
Less than US points, but yeah, Chad's just a great fellow, a great runner. I've been lucky enough to find him on the Embarcadero in San Francisco for a run. And he's, again, one of those folks that you sit down and read one of his blogs. This is not something you read in passing. You got to, you sort of hunker down and let's see what he's actually doing here. And they're done with purpose, with value, and yeah, and a great person as well. It's always a bonus when you get great writers that are great people.
He's always made time for a selfie with me. No matter if I just catch him going between sessions or just walking in the hall, etc., which is I'm very grateful for. And you're right, Eric, his content. I'm always impressed with the depth of his content. Someone busy like him, you kind of think, like you mentioned, is he writing it? Is he not? This guy's writing it, and it's really good stuff. So great.
Yep. Number 10 spot, breaking into number 10. Another guy who does a lot of content, a lot of stuff around the VCDX. He writes about, and he's been in the top 25 for a number of years now, and has finally broken into the top 10. I've met him a few times. He lives in the U.S. now, and he works for Round Tower, and lots of great content there. And that I know people looking to do VCDXs, and that a lot of the content on his blog is a lot of specific stuff and experiences and knowledge and all that relates to VCDX.
Yeah, Renee is one of those fellows that when you give him a moment, and he will give you something that you can never not see the value in. Everything that Renee shares is done with community in mind. He embodies somebody who values everyone else's success more than himself, knowing that potentially his success will be gotten on the backs and the shoulders of others. So he's earned a spot amongst this community, and he continues to do it on a daily basis.
And I think he has every cert that mentioned one. He does it, and then he helps other people get them. And he's a machine that way. Meet him in person, super nice, friendly, laughs, super smart, helps customers all the time. Again, just one of these personalities again that is super enjoyable to be around.
The VCDX, when you fill it out, it says your first time, second time, third time, Renee. Like that's where it is. There's very few people that have reached his level, but he brings people with him every step of the route. Yeah,
and John mentioned it, but I was going to mention it as well. Certification machine. I mean, just out there looking for certs and just going after them, and also encouraging his peers, encouraging me to go after several certs as well as Eric pushing me. So really great person to have on your side.
Renee will help you to find the excuses you're making in your day. He does amazing things because he is very purposeful with how he does it. I'm doing some neat projects with him around that, so it's pretty cool.
Congrats, Renee, getting in the top 10.
So we need our Casey Kasem coming in at number 9.
Coming in number 9, another OG guy hasn't changed position at 9 again, and Eric Shanks, IT Howell. Actually, I just was seeing Scott Lowe comment on a post that Eric had done last week, and that was impressed by that, and that. So Eric does a lot of good content, and that been a long time blogger. Pretty much always been in the top 25 and top 10, and all around great guy.
Yeah, if you don't realize where your career is going, read Eric. He'll tell you. And it's whether you believe it or not, it's going to come true. Scott Lowe, another one, a great example of that, where he may be on the leading edge of a lot of those curves, but you see it 4 years later, and all of a sudden you're on Shank's blog reading about something he did a long time ago, and you're now using this as a Bible to get to that destination. So he's great in that he's leading the charge, but he's also very mindful of where we all come from, and he brings you through that journey very, very well. Never disrespecting the roots of origins of how we got to where we're at, but really, really doing a lot to help people think differently and then be technical about getting there.
I'd say Eric reminds me of Chris Wall in that way, that he, again, when I first met him, he was very purposeful and thoughtful about what he was doing with his blog. And he's been a consistent producer. He's tried different things. He's done, tried different experiments, different kinds of posts, consistent, again, ahead of the curve. Again, a great example for us all to follow.
He could be that crystal ball you need to look into to see where things are headed. So good guy to follow.
Another Eric.
Not Canadian. He is named Eric. So there's bonus points there.
At number 8, the Clan at VM Guru, and that's from the Netherlands. And moving up 2 spots from 10 to 8. And these guys, they put out a lot of good content as well. They've been at it for quite a while. They've been in the top 25 for a number of years. And that, I think I may have met 1 or 2 of them at events and that, but all around great guys. And, they do some great content.
Agreed. Definitely. I call them the blogging peloton. They run as a group and they all propel each other. And then we all sort of jump into their tailwind and watch how it goes. So yeah, great writers, great folks that see what's being used and they tell a great story.
Yeah, and somebody was just mentioning on chat too about group blogs. And here's a good example of a bunch of guys that all blog together, I think, to, put a lot of content on a single site. So it's good to see a lot of contributors.
Yeah, I mean, you think it'd be easier. It's probably more complicated, right? I know any group blog I've been a part of actually has a lot of moving parts, but it does help because it both helps you with accountability and it helps you again with those months and years and seasons when you're not blogging as much. It helps, I think, the consumer too, right? Because they've been a consistent force, producing useful stuff and friends, for years. So I love the idea of group blogs and kind of as mini publications. If anybody needs help getting that started, I can, always happy to help folks.
And number 7, Cody Hosterman from Pure Storage. And Cody previously at 15, moving up 8 spots, and does a lot of blogging on vVols and storage and puts a lot of passion and does a lot of good technical stuff. You could tell he really deep dives into a lot of technology in that. I hear a lot of people linking to the articles he does over there. So great job, Cody. And that, I know I've heard a lot of people, comment on, finding content at Cody's site and that. So he does a really good job of doing some really in-depth technical stuff, especially on storage.
Yeah, definitely somebody you may not even realize you've read his work. He's such a findable writer, for the depth of content he does on storage. And while we all joke that maybe storage isn't sexy, Cody tells you why it's important and really digs in on good stuff. And again, just a great person, somebody who's keen to help out the rest of his community. So very, very cool.
At number 6, climbing up 10 spots and cracking into the top 10, Miss Melissa Eric. Good job.
Yeah,
you influence her to help her.
I am super proud. Obviously, it's amazing to watch Melissa's jump over the years and how much she's contributing to blogs, and she also writes for 24/7 IT.
Right.
So Teresa and her team. Full-time job and doing this. And obviously I've, doing other things, I'm lucky that I get the ultimate title of, I'm the lesser of the couple in blogging capabilities. So I'm so proud of Melissa, and she's also a VCDX, an author, and many other things. So proof that you can squeeze it in if you're keen to do it. And so big ups for Melissa. Also, virtual design master. That little thing.
I was gonna add that. Yeah, I was gonna add that as well. Super creative, very unique style of writing. If you read her blogs, it's not your typical. She puts real life into it. But yes, also virtual design master, creative director, great person to chat with at events, and reach out on Twitter if there's things you need help with. But just overall, super happy that she's number 6 or on the list.
Congrats, Melissa. At number 5, going up 1 spot, we have Mr. Siebert. Congrats, Mr. Siebert.
Yeah, is he a newcomer? I think I've heard of him.
Been around a while.
Another Eric. No, but Eric, and this has probably been said in the past, but you do put a lot of effort into these types of community events, and lot of people are grateful for what you do. So this is really a sort of a credit to you and the stuff that you do, and hope it really recognizes you in the larger community. So thank you for everything you do.
Well, thank you. And I know I've slowed down a little bit here and there, but I definitely try to stay consistent and get content out there. And a lot of the stuff I do behind the scenes, like putting together lists and stuff like that, and maintaining my Launchpad and all that, all kind of accumulates into, all the stuff that I produce. So.
Yeah, and you're a testament to folks that can maybe take a little time away from the blog and not be away from the community. It supports itself, and we know that there's going to be times when we all have to take a little, you were moving, you had other things that were going on, you're doing career changes. So phenomenal to see that, those things can happen. Everybody recognizes the value you bring, and, proud to know you and to be able to be part of what you've built here today.
Great. Well, thank you. At number 4, moving up one spot, Mr. Scott Lowe. And we all know Scott, and he's a longtime blogger and one of the OG guys, and actually has the fastest performing blog out there at 99% Google page speed.
Wow.
And Scott's an all-around great guy, very approachable and that. And I've known him for a long time. He lives in Colorado. His wife actually sold my house for me last year, and Scott continues to put out great content, and I think it shows here 123 posts last year, and Scott's definitely worthy of being in the top 10.
And just to get into the mechanics a bit, I might be wrong here, but I think his site is one of those static sites. Maybe Eric, you might know.
He moved it to one of those DevOps platforms or something.
Yeah.
I remember doing something like that GitHub or something or whatnot.
Yeah.
And that's why you'll see his site's very clean, and that he doesn't have a whole lot on it, but this content.
Started with Jekyll, and now I believe he's using Hugo.
Okay.
If you're keen on going down that path, I don't know that everybody should do it, but it's good to watch. In fact, Scott, I think, shared content on how he did the transition, and other folks have done that. So yeah, I'm a fan. I use the platform for other things. WordPress, significantly easier for first-time bloggers, I find. And this is broadly supported and available. But again, it tells you what Scott does. He eats the dog food of, like, I think I'm going to figure out how containers work. Oh, right. Let me go and join Heftio and prove how it works. And they recently got brought back to VMware. So he tried to escape the veil of VMware, and they brought him right back in.
Pull it back in.
And also a podcaster as well. So the Full Stack podcast, Full Stack Journey podcast. So he's a part of the Packet Pushers, and just a great conversationalist and super knowledgeable, friendly fellow.
Yep, well deserving. At number 3, another longtime stores blogger working for VMware, Mr. Cormac Hogan, and no position change there. And I see, lots of links to his site, and that he's good because he's got the insight from the VMware perspective around storage. So he blogs on a lot of things that he sees personally, working for VMware, which is really helpful, getting a lot of the deep dive stuff on storage and that in particular. And that you can always, if you Google something, you typically get directed to the Cormac's blog on something that's storage related with VMware, and that then definitely deserves to be in that top 10.
I would say Cormac is, again, one of those fellows who, showed up, I guess, 2 years ago, all of a sudden launched into the top 10 because of how much work he was doing. And this is a careful distinction, right? Well, people think, oh, because he has access to the R&D at VMware, that's why he's got this content. 100% agree that it's valuable, but that is not why Cormac's site is here. It's here because he writes about things that are publicly accessible, and they become widely used. So everybody has the power to go to the level of depth that Cormac does. I would encourage you to dig in, find a topic you can, and see how it works. Cormac's made a very keen choice to drive down the deep path with some stuff, and he earned this spot for sure.
Yep, definitely. At number 2, and didn't change position at all, Mr. Vladan Saget, out there on that little island in the, Pacific, the Reunion Island.
Yeah.
And that.
We're waiting for Vladen to pipe in on the chat, but
yeah, I've seen him out there and that. But yeah, he produces a ton of content, and he does a lot of deep dives on a lot of technology and that. And it almost seems like, and maybe it is his full-time job with the amount of content that he produces and that. But he spends a lot of time, going into certain topics and that, and kind of deep diving on things and that. And is very consistent. He keeps it up, every year after year at that pace and that with. I actually didn't count the number of posts because there were so many, so I just kind of guessed it around 300. But he's definitely one of those guys that I think really enjoys doing this and puts out a ton of content for there. And a lot of people, when you're looking for things, they go to his site.
Yeah, Vladen's the reason we have to have an upper bound on post points.
Exactly. Yeah.
Test your measurement of that things, but again, everything from news of the day, quick updates on announcements, as well as deeper technical content. So he covers the gamut on depth of technicality, and widely sponsored for good reasons, because he's got a really strong audience, and Vladen has a great voice. Again, just a good fellow. There's no one you've seen in these top numbers where you would say like, I don't know how they got here. They have definitely earned their spot through their peer community as well as in their content.
Yeah, variety of content, variety of topics. I think also repurposes some of the content, delivers it differently. So I could be wrong, but I think I saw an ebook at one time or something. So good stuff.
Yep, definitely worthy of that number 2 spot. And our number 1 spot, newcomer, Eric Wright. Congrats.
No luck.
Mr. William Land, virtually ghetto, and solidly locked up that number 1 spot. If you looked at the overall points in that he had the most number 1 votes, the most points overall by a lot, and just produces a lot of great high quality content. And that I hear people both externally and internally refer to his posts and that. He's got a lot of good perspective in his role at VMware at a lot of the deep dive things within the VMware products and that, and writes a lot about stuff. Very, all the running nested ES6i and things like that. A lot of great articles on doing that, and home labs, and just one of those guys that continues to produce lots of great content and totally worthy of that number 1 spot.
And again, a testament to doing something that's maybe an addendum to your job, and now ultimately it just become his role. He's actually creating things that are turning into VMware product, and listens very well to the community. So a great fellow to spend time with. You'll find him at vMugs, and VMworld and events, sitting in the corner, hacking away on his laptop because he's always doing something, but also very keen to slide down the laptop lid and spend time talking with people. So a great fellow, and a great cyclist as well. Also a bonus. I think that gets extra points. So
yeah, really a go-to blog for sure. And like you mentioned, Eric, great stuff on the Nook material and nested material. So really good stuff from William.
And he's very good at continuous feedback. This is something for anybody who's new to blogging. I know this from my own experience as well. You will write a technical post, especially that's related to code or to scripting, and 3 years later, someone will say, hey, this doesn't work. There's an error. And you may have to go back and revisit stuff. So William does go back and revisit and answer comments, and does stay continuously, in that blog feedback loop, which is kind of nice. And it's, given the number of readers he's got, I'm sure he gets an overwhelming number of comments.
Yep, definitely. And that definitely worthy of that number 1 spot. Okay, so that's the top 25, and go into the categories really quick here. And that we had the 8 categories like we had last year. Favorite female blogger, vMiss Melissa Palmer. She had gotten that last year and gets the recognition again this year. Congrats, Melissa.
Congratulations. Yeah, again, well earned for sure. It's and Eric, to your credit, you've always done your best to do everything you can to make this a widely inclusive program to bring folks in. And it's interesting because there are not an incredible amount of female voices amongst our community. And so it's great to see, obviously, Melissa getting recognition and other great female writers, podcasters, and folks, from various cultures, various languages, all getting recognized here. So it's, you're doing something great about giving them a place to be able to showcase their talents. And if folks want to get involved, look to the names that are on these boards and reach out where everybody's willing to help.
Agreed. Favorite storage blog, Mr. Cormac Hogan again takes that honor.
I'm sure that Cody was a close second, but yeah, Cormac definitely has a pretty strong, solid following, and rightly so.
It was fairly close. Vladen was the third on that. Favorite non-English blog, this is a new category. I think we had it last year in that. And Jorge de la Cruz got that one.
Congratulations, Jorge.
Favorite scripting blog, Mr. William Lamb.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Favorite new blog, which is basically a blog was started in the last year in 2017, and that goes to Tony Reeves, Digital vSpace.
Yeah, Tony, a great person, vMug leader in, I believe it's the Wisconsin vMug, and he's doing a ton of neat stuff. Also starting to get into some cloud and AWS goodness and all. He literally does everything. A great fellow to reach out to.
And I see him in chat too. So congrats, Tony.
Yeah, good to see Tony there.
Favorite podcasts, Mr. Pete Fletch, John Nicholson over at VMware with a Virtually Speaking podcast, and then they do a lot of great stuff on that one, and that one's really evolved and become very popular, and I enjoy listening to it, and I've been on it a few times myself, and I know they do that at events as well, and definitely well deserved there. That's really evolved into a really good podcast.
And I see Angelo's earned the top getting kicked out of a meeting room host award.
And then, in case you noticed, John had to leave. He had another meeting he had to cut out about 10 minutes ago. Favorite news info site, the Register again with, I think, vBlog was very close second.
Yeah. Many years of bite in the hand that feeds IT. And some interesting and fun voices in there, some challenging commentary. And they're a great bunch of folks, and they take a neat approach to bringing news on tech to the fore.
Yep, definitely. Favorite independent blogger, and Renee got that one, and it was very, very close. It was only 2 votes between Renee. The previous years, it was Vladen, and Vladen was number 2 by like 2 votes this year, and so that was a very close one on that. But Renee got the top honor there.
Again, another well-deserved spot. Renee's really helped to give an independent voice. Sits between many communities and many technologies and gives you an honest opinion on backed by proven experience. He's not just talking about these things, he's doing them on a daily basis.
Yep, agreed. So in closing, that's all. I'll be publishing on my blog the results that we just talked about today, the link to this recording, and then I'll be publishing the full results. So all of the 287 blogs in the category voting, I'll be publishing probably by tomorrow. Congratulations to everybody that we talked about today, and that, it's a lot of hard work that has paid off, and it's good to get that recognition from your peers in the community that, they recognize your hard work, and the voting, I think, acknowledges that. We encourage people to keep at it, and that even if you didn't make the top 25 this year or the top 50 or whatnot, that it is a journey, and that really it takes years and years for people to kind of build up their brand, get their content recognized, and be able to involve and get a little bit more popular in that. It's not something that you can really do overnight. We'll be back next year. Actually, this one was a little bit late, so we're looking to kick off again in the fall. I think we do have a sponsorship available for this upcoming one. Contact me for any details, and if you have any suggestions or feedback on just how we do the voting or the process or anything like that, please be sure and let me know. Thank you for John and Eric and Angelo for joining. And that, I know John had to cut out early. Any final thoughts, you guys, on the whole thing?
I would encourage folks, if they haven't started blogging, to start today. I mean, it's a great way to get connected with folks in the broader community and really share your knowledge with others. So best time to start is today.
Yeah, I've definitely agreed. I wrote it every day. I have my, a set of pages, I write down content, and today, like I do often, I said, what can I do every day, including today, that I can do to give back to somebody else in my community? Giving through blogging and sharing your experiences. No one is alone in the thing they've experienced. So it's valuable. And to your credit, Eric Siebert, for all you've done. You do this every year, of no other reason than, sharing with the community, and you've built a lot of folks up. And so I'm happy to have been one of the ones that, we're now amongst a great peer group, and it's super cool. So thank you to everybody who's been participating and supporting this event. Go to the vsphereland.com, find the buy me a beer thing, and buy that man a beer. So Eric, I need to do that again this year. I believe I did that last year. You deserve it. Thank you again for all you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And well, that's a wrap this year. And we'll see you again coming up soon. Thank you all for watching and joining us. And we look forward to for doing this again.
We'll see you all again.
Wow.